Hi, welcome to Create Good. This afternoon we have Leandra Ganko from Lega Design Group, and she's going to be presenting on website best practices. Take it away, Leandra.
Hey, just a quick start here. Thanks to Dawn for asking me to speak. Really looking forward to it. And yeah, so I'm quick start here. I'm a web designer, but building and maintaining website requires a lot more than large engaging hero images and attention grabbing headlines. So how your website functions as a whole and whether users can find you is just as important as how your site looks. So my talk today is going to be in three different sections, broken up by a short Q&A. So at any point, if you have a question and you think of something while I'm talking, there should be like a little questions area over on the side. Feel free to go ahead and type anything in there that you can think of that you want to ask. And when we get to that break point, Dawn will pick out a few to relay to me, and I'll try to get some questions answered. So let's get started here. A little about me. My name is Leandra Ganko, and I started League of Design Group in 2008. I do design websites for nonprofits and small businesses, and I work primarily in WordPress. And let's see, so here's a couple examples of some sites that I've designed recently. I work with a range of clients from educational groups to dog rescues to private membership organizations, women's rights groups, and preschools also. So a pretty broad range of clients and causes that I work with. So I'm also a proud resident of Durham. I've been living in the Triangle for 15 years now. And I got started in Durham Young Professionals Group way back in the day, doing the civic subcommittee planning for when we would do donations and stuff like that during our events. I would be on the team that would help pick like what nonprofit the donations were going to and stuff like that. Most recently, I was on the planning committee for the NC Tech for Good annual conference. I think they haven't had that the last 1 or 2 years, but I've been involved with that for about 8 years as well. So this is just an excuse to show you my dog. This is Pasha, and a mini Schnauzer rescue that we've had for many years now. So I'm also a world traveler. I am currently grounded because of the coronavirus, but here's a lovely picture of me right before I devoured this Korean hot dog when we were in South Korea last year. And because of social distancing, I have turned to baking. That seems to be the way that I am coping with being an extrovert and not being able to leave the house. So here is a complete array of stuff that I've baked, anywhere from crackers to chocolate donuts to homemade English muffins. If you have any suggestions, please use the questions box to let me know. I'm happy to jump in, and if I have a little bit of yeast, I'll give it a shot. So basically, this gets us to the part where we're discussing how to keep your website online and running safely, how to avoid drama if the volunteer who set up your website leaves the organization and won't return emails, true story, why website security also includes how users kind of feel about your website, and website optimization best practices. So these are the three kind of sections that we're going to be discussing today. So I often get, so website succession continuation plan. So what is it and why do I need one? So I often get hired to redesign existing websites. So this is where I want to start because the beginning of a project can be very, very tricky if pieces of the puzzle are missing. So basically, what I am talking about is a list of important logins and info related to your site. So why is this important? Well, I've had a couple instances where, for example, someone contacted me recently because their brother-in-law had suddenly passed away, and he was the sole login person for their website. So with a little sleuthing, we had to kind of dig through a bunch of passwords and emails back and forth to kind of reset everything and gain control of the website again. I've also had, instances where very well-meaning volunteers have decided, they're like, oh, we'll purchase the domain name for you, we'll get the hosting set up or whatever, and somebody's had a fallout or there's been a disagreement in the organization, and we've lost domain names, we've lost websites. So yeah, you basically want to make sure that your organization has a list of important logins available to you. So for this website succession plan, what do I need? So you need where your domain name is registered, where your website is hosted, how your email is routed and delivered, and a whole bunch of different usernames and passwords. So basically use this as a starting point. So you may have Eventbrite, or you may have paid plugins or something like that. This is basically just bare minimum of things that you have. It's going to be very specific to your organization. So one of the things too about email is, how is your email situation in terms of, is everybody, for some smaller organizations, we've had a whole bunch of people just using their own personal emails, or sometimes they're rerouted through like Microsoft Office or G Suite or something like that. So just something to keep in mind, and something just to know the answer to how your email is handled. So as far as I get to the end of the usernames and passwords with the social media logins, stuff like Twitter and Instagram just have one login. So one of the things I wanted to highlight was Facebook is slightly different with that. So I just have a quick screenshot here to show you that you want to add somebody else to your Facebook page. Hopefully a lot of you know this, but just in case you don't, this is how you do it. So you would go over into settings over here, page roles, and then assign a new page role. So right now, I believe you have to be friends with the people that you add to your Facebook page. If not, I think there's a way to kind of get there and do it. But I think that certainly helps the process along, and they just have to accept it. So it's really good to have more than one person kind of involved with your Facebook page, just in case something happens. So what if you aren't sure who the contact person is for, say, your website or your domain? So one quick way of doing this is basically you could do a who is lookup, which I'll mention. It's like basically just whois.com, but I'll show us a slide later that's got more information about that. But essentially what it does is when you do this who is lookup, it'll tell you, like, for example, who the registrar is, how old the status is, what name servers. So this can be helpful if you don't know where you're hosted. Maybe you come into the organization and a lot of that information's been lost. We can kind of track it down this way. And as far as the registrant contact information, this is for your domain. And these are just snapshots from GoDaddy and from DreamHost, two of the domain registrars and hosting situations that I come in contact with more frequently. But you have different options for all of these contact people. So the registrant, the administrative, technical, and billing. So what's nice about this is that, for example, if you have a web designer, I set up websites for people all the time. And I am often the registrant and administrative contact, or also technical. But you may want to have, if you have me, for example, paying the bills and making sure everything gets renewed, definitely leave me as billing. But you want to maybe have somebody in the organization be an administrative contact, for example. So that way, in case something happens, there's an email address related to your organization that is associated with the account. And so that person can then email if there's any kind of issue there. So let's see. Password management tools. Okay, so this is where we get to, I have all these passwords, now where do I put them? So what you don't want to do is have an Excel spreadsheet on someone's computer. You don't want to probably be like my mother-in-law, who has a little notebook with all of her passwords in it. So if she accidentally misplaces it, she can't get into her Hotmail. So there's many not to do kind of things. But one of the things that is a definite yes is using any of these password management tools. So I did a lot of research on this, and the top three, so I personally use LastPass, and I really like it. I've been using it for years because I have to personally manage a lot of passwords. But LastPass, 1Password, and Dashlane all provide, I believe, free versions as well as paid versions. I know LastPass, the free version is totally fine, so you could stick with that. The LastPass, for example, has a LastPass Teams. I know Dashlane also has a Teams function, so you can have multiple people with admin access to your deposits of passwords. So however your organization kind of wants to handle that is up to you guys, but these are some options of some quick things you can use. And then Password Boss, LogMeIn, Once, and Passful are also like honorable mentions. I've seen them mentioned several different times. And so as far as website succession plan, the main takeaways here are, using the password management tool. The whois.domaintools.com is what I was mentioning earlier. That's going to give you some information about where you're hosted, who's the registrar, stuff like that. And then I would check the list of logins regularly. Also, when I worked at UNC, we had a file cleanup day in April, and we would basically just go through and dump all the old paper files and get through, clean up the computer, stuff like that. So if you have something like that already scheduled, I would go ahead and just wrap your passwords into that, because sometimes people can change their passwords and then maybe don't update the documents. So it's a really good way of just keeping track of everything like that. And then one extra thing, please keep a credit card on file and set the domain to renew automatically. So I've run into a lot of issues where people are not aware that their domain and their hosting are two separate entities, and one just gets overlooked and doesn't get updated, and then the website goes away. So it's a really good idea to make sure you have a credit card on file associated with the organization if you can, or the executive director or whatever, and then make sure that it's automatically going to renew so you don't end up with any unhappy surprises. So, all right, questions. It's our first question area, our first break.
So it sounds like a spreadsheet isn't good enough for my succession planning. Is that what you're saying?
So a spreadsheet, not great.
Okay. Sounds good. I have a question. Okay. Sonia asks, how do you get people to use password managers for security passwords if they're wedded to their paper printouts and password 123?
So yes, I didn't even get to the password 123. So yeah, the buy-in is can be a really, really difficult thing. I think the main focus is going to be the high level passwords you want to make sure are included in something that's got a secure password manager. So even if they insist on using password 123, hopefully that is a separate login that they have where there is a more secure, harder password to crack that you're using for like your WordPress install, for example, or your hosting account or something like that. Yeah, that's a difficult one. I mean, I think ultimately, if website best practices, right, is like making, potentially changing your password a lot. I know that when I was at UNC and they kept making us change our onion every 3 months, it drove me crazy. Because I just remembered my password, I just memorized it, and all of my colleagues had like little sticky notes with like their password like right on their computer and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think it might just be a little bit of a process, but I think maybe trying to enact a policy and just say, hey, we're moving forward, we're doing this. We like you to have your password in here. I think that might be helpful.
Mm-hmm. And I think so on our team, Brian is the better secure individual of our team. And I mean, he just reminds me of like the fear factor every once in a while of the potential of having hackers, right? And I think that's helpful for some people to, that these are in place to protect your organization's data and to protect. Yeah. I mean, we've had sites flip over to we had a site flip over to a Russian porn site overnight. So that was a real fun day of fixing that. So
Yeah, I've had that happen. When I was actually had a client of mine whose site got hacked. I was out of the country and I wasn't actually in charge of their hosting. They had a different IT person for their hosting, and so I was like, I am so sorry, but you're gonna have to contact, this guy for the hosting because I had set up all the backups and everything like that, but I didn't have the hosting login because that was like very secure information. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. I'm sure there'll be more questions later, but keep on pressing on.
All right. So next section, website security. Speaking of which, so website security. There's a couple different parts to this, and how site visitors perceive the security of your website is just as important as also protecting your organization from hackers. Probably the more practical. So it's more of like when somebody comes to your website, do they feel like you've done everything they can to protect their data? And then we're just going to talk about some other miscellaneous items as well. So the first thing on here is going to be SSL certificates. So what do they even do? Like, what is this, right? So essentially, it's going to be protecting user data, like usernames or passwords or personal information that's submitted through like a contact form or something like that. It creates trust in your organization, and extra bonus, it improves your SEO rankings. So always, the keyword and sweet spot for that. So SSL certificate. So this lock icon, which I'm sure we've seen a lot of, basically back in 2018, Google Chrome started doing this lovely, not secure notification here if you went to a website and it did not have a secure SSL certificate. So you can see over here, there's this lock and it's this lovely green text here, which makes you feel all safe and cozy. And then over here, there's a nice big red, your connection to the site is not secure. So we obviously do not want this. And Chrome does it, so Chrome does it this way. This is Firefox. So we have this lovely little lock here with connection secure. And this one just has a lock with a line through it, connection not secure. So we obviously do not want this. So we need one. How do I get one? So a lot of hosting providers will offer free ones, like Bluehost, DreamHost, HostGator. I listed a couple right there. You can do a quick web search and find some others. A lot will basically offer this service for you for free that's wrapped into your hosting account charges. One of the things to keep in mind, though, for these, and also with the DIY website companies as well, is that it may have to be manually activated. So just because you signed up and you have a website designed and it's launched and it's ready to go doesn't mean that your free SSL certificate is actually connected to your site. So that's something you want to get involved with your hosting company, ask some questions, and find out. Usually it's a matter of logging into the cPanel, doing a few things, and getting that activated. So there's also third-party providers, and there's a link right there to domain.com. I believe it's like $36 a year. So if for some reason you are in a private hosting situation or not with one of the big companies and you need a separate SSL certificate, there is an option available for you. So what I would stay away from just is that, one of the things is GoDaddy charges up to $80 a year for an SSL certificate, and there's no evidence that the GoDaddy certificate is any more or less secure than the free Let's Encrypt ones usually that the other hosting providers are providing for you. So I would kind of try to avoid that, especially if you'd like to save some costs on the hosting situation. So one of the things that I've had come up is sometimes you'll get an insecure message. So this is probably a little bit technical for some people, but we'll go for it. So this is really more towards a WordPress site since that's what I develop in. But so if for some reason you have that SSL certificate installed and your website is still showing insecure and your phone is still showing it insecure, that's another really quick way of testing it is see if your phone is showing the secure lock. That can, because sometimes your desktop will show it and it'll be just fine and your phone says it's insecure. And so One of the things, so here's just a list of things you can check really quick. The dashboard, there's an area in there where you can make sure that you have HTTPS set up for your website. Sometimes image links, if they are a direct link in your text, your copy of your website, if they're still showing an HTTP link instead of an HTTPS link, sometimes that can show an insecure message. So one way to test for that is to go to different pages of your site, and if certain pages have a little lock icon and some pages don't, that's a hint that there's an issue with maybe an image or a link on your page that's causing that problem. Something I had to do recently was a really simple SSL plugin. I tried even the code snippet that you see at the bottom there, and nothing was working. And so finally, I just installed a really easy, simple plugin, turned that on, and boom, everything was automatically resolving to HTTPS. So just a few quick little things to troubleshoot in case you're running into that problem. So another thing that is, something that can help you gain confidence for site visitors, or gain the confidence of site visitors, I should say, is a privacy policy. So essentially, this is just a document outlining what info you are collecting and keeping when someone visits your site. So essentially, I'm going to have some more detailed information on the next slide, but two of the things I wanted to point out here is there's a great online tool to generate a free privacy policy, and that's at termly.io. And also in WordPress, in the latest versions of WordPress, they have a sample guide under the settings and privacy area that you can basically copy and paste into a page on your WordPress site. And then from there, you can set that as your automatic privacy page, which makes it really kind of nice and easy. So feel free to take a screenshot of this. There's a lot of information. So essentially, these are some specifics of what a privacy policy should include, which includes, basic information about your organization, how long you save information for. So for example, when you get a contact form, do you save all the information in that contact form? Because usually these different plugins that you use for contact forms will save like an IP address or something like that. So how long do you keep that information for? Do you keep it for 6 months? Do you keep it for a year? All that should go into here. WordPress, for example, by default does not save any site visitor information, but you may have plugins that do, like I'm sure a lot of us are running Google Analytics on our sites, so they have a privacy policy that you may want to link to because you're basically collecting a whole bunch of user data about where the site user is going, stuff like that. So you want to make sure that you're just being very upfront about how this is, how the data is being used. And you really would it would be really, really great to say you're not selling it to anybody, especially if you're not, you want to make sure that you make that clear as well. So protecting your website, WordPress basics. This is kind of where I geek out a little bit about WordPress, since that's my main focus and what I do daily. So you really, really want to make sure that you're running the latest version of WordPress. It is updated. It depends. I think when there's certain security flaws found, stuff like that, they go ahead and run an update for it. And then also your plugins and themes, you want to make sure those are also up to date. So I developed with Genesis. So it is a parent kind of theme that runs in WordPress. And so hopefully, if you are running a WordPress site, your theme is a child theme, which is based on, maybe a parent theme or something like that. Like if you're using like Thesis or Genesis or Divi or one of those, your theme for your site should be a child theme. So what's nice about that is that it's an extra layer of security because Genesis, for example, will also be updated anytime there's an update to WordPress. A lot of the times when they're adding new features, stuff like that. So you really want to make sure that all of that is up to date just to prevent any security mishaps. As we mentioned earlier, using secure and unique passwords is also really, really helpful. Back when WordPress updated to 5.2, I think we're on 5.4 right now, they added a new feature called Tools Site Health. So that's going to be in your dashboard, and this is just a really neat feature to kind of give you an idea of, if you have any plugins maybe that aren't used or activated. I am one of those. I love to play around with plugins and themes and stuff like that, and so I am guilty of having several plugins that are inactive on my site, especially when I'm building them. So it's really a good idea to go in there once you've figured out that maybe you don't need, like once you've used the WordPress importer to move your content over, you don't need it. You can just get rid of it. And then it just basically becomes one more thing to make sure is updated to prevent any kind of security issues. So if you're not using it, if you play around with it, don't like it, just get rid of it. Nobody needs 3 contact form plugins that they're not using on their site. Another important thing is to check that your hosting company is running the most recent version of PHP. Recently, GoDaddy, I actually have a client right now that's having a site moved by GoDaddy because their PHP topped out at 5.6. And right now you cannot update WordPress if you are running, I think it's like 5.6 or earlier on the hosting box, basically, that your website is housed at. So anyway, you want to make sure that you check with your hosting company. And if you can get moved or upgraded, definitely do that because it just becomes safer also, another layer of protection. And then schedule regular database backups. You definitely want to make sure that you have something set up so in case there is a problem, like what Dawn was saying about being hacked by the Russians, you have some sort of option to restore the website quickly if that does come up. So here is a quick example of how your site, if you log in and you have not updated things, this is how your site is going to look. So like I said, you have this PHP warning here. It'll tell you a little bit more about that. As I mentioned, WordPress 5.4 is the most recent version. Genesis, which is the parent theme that I use to do developing. This will tell me, okay, I got 8 plugins that need updating, and the updates, this number right here is going to include the plugins and the themes that need updating. And so a lot of this is going to be a one-click updating kind of situation, but you just kind of want to make sure, somebody's logging in once a week or so, just to make sure you don't have any outstanding updates that need to be run. So let's see here. So useful WordPress plugins. So these are just a list here for, I have some website security monitoring. I have used all of these on the left. I really like WordFence. Their free version is really, really good. Security is also really excellent. I think most of the clients that I know that are using Security have a paid version of it, but they send you updates and login, attempts and stuff like that. So it's a really great, series. And then same thing with Jetpack. Once again, they'll just basically send you an email if if there's people trying to get into the site or multiple logins that have been rejected, something like that. And as far as database backups go, really need to make sure, very simple, it's just they're stored in a safe place. I've done it a couple different ways. I've had them either stored in the root directory of the hosting account so you can get to them through FTP, or more commonly, I just have them emailed to me. So I have tons and tons of, at the end of the week, I get all these emails from WordPress basically outlining all the different databases that have been backed up and sent to me. And then I keep a backup on my computer and then offsite as well, just to make sure that if something does happen, we have a solution. And a lot of my clients are fine with that. I would also suggest setting somebody up at your organization to get an email as well, just so there's multiple backups, can never hurt anything. And so here are 3 different plugins that I've used frequently. All of 3 of these are totally fine. They're slightly different depending on functionality, so it's really just a matter of how you want to, basically what you want to choose. And I would also suggest checking with your hosting company. Most hosting companies should be running backups on your site automatically. It may be a little bit more difficult as far as some different hosting companies have different policies about restoring your site if there's a problem. So I would just go ahead and double check that information to make sure that you have all your bases covered for that. So here's just 2 miscellaneous things that I wanted to mention really quick. And so this is also in the realm of protecting your business in general. So Google My Business, I'm sure you've probably seen this, where you do a search result and a whole bunch of information comes up. And so what you really want for this is like a lot of people will do searches on mobile devices. And so if you claimed your business for Google My Business, you can put in like the hours your business is open, or your organization is open. You can, have contact information about the phone number. You can put in your website. And this just helps people find you a little bit easier through Google searches. And then also alternate domain names. So this one's, I don't know how important it is necessarily, but I did have a client of mine once register every domain name he could possibly think of that was close to his. And I guess he just felt better that if there was a typo or anything like that, people were still getting to him and not, any of his competitors or something like that. So it's just something to think about, as well as another thing that you can use to kind of protect your good name for that. So, all right, break number 2. Any questions?
We do. Okay, let's see. Megan reassures you that UNC now is the same for 6 months. So they've changed that a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
It's
Emily,
been a while since I've worked there, so.
Yeah. Just a bit. Emily says, we're not running the latest version of WordPress. What do we need to do in order to update it? Will it crash our site?
So yeah, hopefully not. I think the key is going to be, I would say 9.5 times out of 10, just clicking update WordPress is totally fine. Now, it depends. How old is your version of WordPress? Because if you're running, right now we're on 5.4, and a lot of things have changed in terms of blocks and Gutenberg and all that stuff. So that all changed with 5. So if you're running something that's earlier than 5, a lot of stuff is going to change in the dashboard, which may or may not be easy to not fix, but it's going to look very, very different in your dashboard. So there's a couple different things I would suggest if you have, like I said, an older version of that. I would make sure to, when you do upgrade, install what is called Classic Editor. So they changed everything to default Gutenberg blocks, which can be very, very frustrating because the lovely Word editor that we're all used to using went away in that version. And so if you install the plugin called Classic Editor, and you'll see it when you add new plugins, there's like 5 million installs because people are still reluctantly accepting the Gutenberg editor. But anyway, so I would suggest that, doing that. And also run a backup on your site before you update it. So that way, if for some reason something crashes or something goes awry, what you can do is do a restore of your website with the older version of WordPress. So one of the tricks that I've used, which I don't know if you have FTP access or anything like that, but if you do have FTP access, you can go to wordpress.org and download the current version of WordPress that you have, and make sure you have a copy of it, because if for some reason something gets messed up, you can always install through FTP, just drag the folders over to kind of reset your version of WordPress. Or you can have a web person do it for you, but there are ways around it. But I would have somebody handy to troubleshoot in case something goes wrong. I hate to see that happen. You're probably going to be fine though.
Yeah, what we usually see is plugins. Plugins are the hardest. Or usually 1 or 2 of your plugins will break at update. So so don't update at 5 o'clock on Friday and expect it to be okay. So.
Right. Yeah. Please don't do that. And please don't call your web designer at 8 a.m. on Saturday because you decided to update all your websites and everything's broken. No, Dawn is correct though. I oftentimes will see a plugin get messed up, and that usually has to be fixed either through FTP or through the database a lot of times, which is super fun when you're not expecting to have a whole bunch more work.
Yep. Okie dokie. So Lisa asks, did your host decide to move away from cPanel? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
there's a couple different ways. So back in the day, everything was cPanel. So I really got used to, being able to fly around the cPanel and find everything. I use DreamHost primarily now, and they don't use a normal cPanel interface. And a lot of the other ones don't either. I think one of the sites that I was working on recently is on HostGator, and they have like a modified cPanel. So it's definitely a bit different. But a lot of the stuff you're going to you want to look for to make sure you have through your hosting company is PHP MyAdmin access, and so that access will let you into your database because that's going to be pretty crucial to troubleshoot any mistakes that you have or that get made or something happens. Like you definitely want database access. Like if the super admin of your WordPress site either you lose the email that's associated with it or something happens and you need to change that main person, the only really easy way to do it is to go through the database to fix it. So you want to look for something like PHP MyAdmin. You should be able to have that situation and then access the emails and stuff like that, even though you don't have like a quote unquote cPanel access.
Okay. Yeah, so Lisa has a follow-up that ours moved to direct admin. So just.
Ooh, direct admin. Interesting.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Okay. So if you have a WordPress plugin update is available, do you generally recommend updating it right away, or are there any drawbacks to just doing all available updates? It's really about timing. So should you do it all the time? Should you do it once a quarter? What's kind of your update schedule?
Oh, okay. I would do it pretty much right away. I would say, as I mentioned, I would try to log in. I have clients of mine that I do like monthly. I think it's probably okay. I mean, I don't think anything. I mean, I don't think, knock on wood. I certainly hope that nothing, would be that horrible to happen. Like if you don't update one plugin for, a week. So you can get a little bit crazy with trying to update it because I know WordFence, for example, one of the like website security plugins that I had mentioned before, they'll automatically send me an email if plugins are out of date. And so that can get a little tiring if you have lots and lots of that happening. So I would suggest, doing either weekly or monthly. Just go in there and go ahead and update everything. And in most cases, I would say the plugins are going to be a safe update. So in terms of, if something doesn't accidentally crash because of some theme thing or whatever. But as far as just going ahead and updating your plugins, I would go ahead and, either make a schedule to do it, or if you just happen to log in, you see one, you don't have to wait until it's time to do it. Yeah.
Sounds good. I'll send you back into your presentation.
All right. All right, so last section, website optimization. So basically, being mobile responsive essentially just means, this lovely picture that you've picked out, that you've carefully curated for your website, isn't taking, 6 days to load on someone's phone, because then you're kind of losing them, basically. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. A sitemap. So basically, it's this roadmap for your website. Google Site Links, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then once again, back to helpful WordPress plugins for this. So basically, a quick review of my Google Analytics for a lot of my sites are becoming up about 60% mobile, 35% desktop, and about 5% tablet. And so essentially well over 50% right now of traffic is going to be from people's phones. So mobile responsive characteristics is essentially like, things are going to shift around a little bit. So everybody is going to be seeing the same content in theory, but they're just going to be seeing it slightly differently. So for example, like your sidebar may like kind of switch below your main content. Your menu is going to turn into a little hamburger that then, you can, click open and close and stuff like that. But a lot of these other things too, like make sure your button sizes are large enough for people to click on their phones. You know, images are scaling properly so they're not taking forever to load. You know, your header headlines should be, you know, large enough to read, but also your body text should be large enough to read. You know, you don't want no pinching and zooming on your site to read content, and no horizontal scrolling. So those are the kind of things that you want to make sure that you know, that you have set up for your site. And I mean, I work in WordPress, and so all the themes that I've been developing are, you know, innately mobile responsive, and so it's just going to be a matter of tweaking, you know, certain things, like maybe we want images to go above this one section instead of below, and so there just has to be some tweaks that need to be involved there. So these are some tools to help you test the mobile responsiveness of your own site. So over here on the right, we have essentially, this is the resizer thing. So this is down here, this third one. But it essentially just gives you a really quick preview as to what your site is going to look like on a desktop, on a tablet, or, you know, vertically or horizontally on a tablet, and then on someone's phone. And some of these can get really cool. I mean, they can actually tell you, like, this is what it's going to look like on an iPhone. This is what it's going to look like on an Android phone. So you can really kind of drill down if you find that, you know, you're looking at your Google Analytics and all of your traffic's coming from an iPhone. Well, it's probably a good idea to figure out what your site actually looks like on an iPhone, especially if no one in your organization, unlikely, but I have an Android phone myself, so I need to outsource my iPhone views sometimes. And so anyway, those are some of the websites you can use to test that out. And then website speed is another thing. So if you find that, you know, your site is taking a really long time to load, here are some examples of some sites you can go to test your website speed. It'll basically, you just plug in your domain and it'll tell you how fast your site is taking to load. So for example, I have some speed results, website speed results here. And so one of the cool things about this is the content breakdown down here. So for example, if your site is taking forever to load, you can tell, it'll give you a visual right away, like, okay, maybe it's my images, like this site is 36%, you know, images, and maybe the font. You know, you've picked out some awesome Google fonts, but oh my word, why are they taking up 50% of my load time on my page? Not great, right? You know, CSS, that's going to be your style sheet, JavaScript, so that's other code that's kind of running in the background. So it's really, this can be really, really helpful, especially if you do find that you're having slow load times, to kind of figure out and pinpoint where the problem is, and hopefully how to, you know, move forward for fixing it. So XML sitemaps. So this is basically a list of all the important URLs on your site, and it's basically just a way to tell Google and other search engines, hey, like, this is the most important stuff that I need you to look at on my site, and I want to make sure that is included in any search results that pop up for my organization. What's nice about an XML sitemap is you can edit this file. So like, there's a couple of sitemap, there's one sitemap generator that I really, really like to use. But when you have this sitemap, you can essentially open it up in a like a text editor, and you can remove some things, you can add some things, and basically, well, you probably won't add things, but you can definitely remove things. So if you have, like in WordPress, for example, if you have some like uncategorized posts, or you have some posts that are supposed to be like a banner image or a testimonial or something like that, that you maybe don't want included in your sitemap, you can go ahead and just remove those. So it really kind of gives you a more granular feel for what you want included and what not. Telling Google, you know, basically like, look at this, don't bother looking at this. And then there's the link here to submit a sitemap to Google. And then I found this great article about sitemaps that's just, I mean, it's a long read, but this guy really lays out the importance of why sitemaps are a good thing. So if you really want to just dive into sitemaps, that's a good resource for that. All right. Oh, and also the sitemaps are really, really important after redesign. So I wanted to add that as well. So you want to make sure that if you've recently reorganized your website or redesigned your website and some of the links have changed, you definitely want to make sure that you regenerate a new sitemap and get that submitted to Google so that they'll know not to highlight a bunch of pages that may have changed slightly. So as far as Google site links are concerned, that segues us into here. This is an example right here. So you've probably seen this. Like if I do a web search for me, I get this explanation here, which I've set up, and then I have these pages that are listed, these important pages that Google has deemed important that are listed right here, below my search results. So basically what these do is you want to make sure that you are getting these site links for your organization's name. If you do a search for your organization, you want to make sure that you're the top hits and that you have these lovely site links because they improve click-through rates and encourages trust, and probably most importantly, it pushes everything else down the page so that you have way more real estate at the top so people can find you and there's more options to click on your content versus someone else's content. So the bad news is that these are automated. Google doesn't tell you how to basically create these anymore. And you used to be able to use Google Webmaster Tools to demote pages or eliminate them, or basically just tell Google, like, just don't look at this. And they took that feature away a couple years ago. So basically I have a couple tips here to optimize for, what Google puts in those site links for your organization. So you want to make sure that your website's name is unique, obviously related to your organization, but unique still. Add that sitemap XML file to your Google search account. Streamline your site navigation. Make it very, very obvious, what are the top level pages and what are the secondary pages, etc. Use descriptive anchor links. So basically that just means, don't say, click here to find out more information about our programs or something like that. You want to make sure that those internal links that you have sprinkled throughout your content on your site are describing where you're sending people. And then make sure that your website homepage has enough relevant content in it. We all love beautiful pictures. We love the sections. We love all the scrolling, information and stuff like that. But you want to make sure that there's enough relevant content about your organization that's on there to give some juice to what Google is looking for. So basically some SEO and website health plugins that would be helpful. So you're going to have for SEO, Yoast, Jetpack, all have, I think it's like 5 million downloads. All-in-one SEO pack has about 2 million downloads. For this, it's probably, most people use Yoast, I think, that I've run into, but a lot of this is also preference, how everything looks in the dashboard and, what kind of fine tuning you can do with each of these things. But all of these plugins are excellent, and you can play around with them for hours. It's a very, very good tool. And then as far as overall site health, these are just 3 plugins that I really, especially after I do a site redesign or something like that. The broken link checker is wonderful. This also just helps with, people are changing URLs all the time. So you're setting up redirection for your own 404 errors or redirects or something like that. You want to make sure that there's a broken link checker for checking for other people's, basically just links that are no longer working. So you want to make sure that anything you're linking to is also, you're not sending people off into the void. And then Enable Media Replace is just a really cool plugin because this comes up a lot where organizations will have like an application PDF or something like that that was uploaded 3 years ago. And so the URL for it is, the month, the year, the date, this application. And if you change it, you're worried that their links are gonna break or somebody's gonna have it bookmarked or something like that. So Enable Media Replace essentially just allows you to go in and leave all of the links exactly the same as it was, but replace what is being downloaded. So it's really helpful. I found personally more for PDFs than for photos and pictures and stuff like that, but you can use it for that as well. So that's it. So we've gotten through all of the sections, and I hope that I provided some useful information. And if you guys have any additional questions, lay it on me. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you want to raise your hand and talk to Leandra or chat in the box, I've got both open so I can um, help you out with that. So thank you for this, Leandra. That was great. I think it's good to have just kind of basic stuff. Um, yeah, just for a good reminder. I don't know. There's a lot of, and this is perfect. It's perfect kind of housekeeping during um, possible slow times like this, right? That this is a really good thing to work on while maybe people aren't in the office or something like that. So,
Yes,
it's really,
also
really great stuff. Okie dokie, I got one from, let's see. Oh, they're coming in. Okay. Anna asks, how do you know when it's time for a new website? Any guidance on how to anticipate what kind of budget you'll need? Honestly, I have no idea, but should I be planning for 20 or for 5,000 or 20,000?
So a lot of times it just depends. I mean, that's going to be a very personal decision based on your organization, of course. Um, there are plenty of places that will easily take, happy to take $20,000 to redesign your website. I tend to deal with a little bit more with smaller projects, so it typically tends to be like 5,000 and under for most of my work. But I would say you really need to put together an idea of what you want your website to do, because that's going to be the most important thing, right? I mean, having a really beautiful website, is wonderful. If you go to a lot of these huge foundations with like millions and millions of dollars, in donations, they can put together a very, very slick website because they have the money to spend on it. And that might not be, that might not be the best use of your funds to spend, $50,000 on a website, or it might be. Maybe you're running a really important campaign. You really need something that's going to look, just absolutely fantastic. But I don't know. I mean, that's hard. As far as needing a new website, I would say when your website stops doing what you need it to do, or you can't kind of you can't just keep adding things or throwing things at it. I think that's where I end up entering the picture a lot of times. Is that people either have had HTML websites that haven't been updated in a while, or they have WordPress sites that are running old themes and they just don't have the functionality. They just don't look like as new and shiny as they could.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if you're starting to run up against a wall in terms of functionality, I think you need to look into a website redesign. But the budget, yeah, that's hard. That's just a really thing. Yeah.
It is really hard. Yeah. So yeah, BCDC Ideas also does websites. Yeah. And we've, I mean, our advice is every 3 to 5 years is looking at doing a new website, just because fit and finish and design standards change pretty rapidly online. So we really recommend kind of people doing a design update every 3 to 5 years. And then actually we just wrapped on a project on a website that was 60,000, and it needed every penny of that. So they had hundreds of resources that need to be moved and hundreds of blog pages that needed to be moved. So that site is incredibly deep, and it needed every penny of that. And it was a 8-month process.
Content can really be
a 4-member team. So I mean, I think it's your site. It just depends on how deep it is, and that's usually how I start with pricing, is how many pages, and then I mean, but we also do sites. Yeah, we do sites in that $5,000 range all the time too. So yeah. Okay.
So that's a good point. I like that point about the size of the site. That definitely, because man hours for moving content over is a real thing.
Yeah, we had something like 2,000 links to check and stuff like that. Like it was intense. It was intense. It was great. It was great. It was a great project. Okay, so Mario asks, he says, this is a tough question, so it might stump you. Well, I don't know. Let's see. Okay, so, but any great examples of websites that showcase your rules of thumb, or any good study materials for us?
So let's see. Well, of course, all the sites that I've designed. No, let's see. So
of course.
I think of course. I mean, that's the obvious answer. No, I mean, I think there's a lot of, like I said, large foundation websites. So a lot of times what'll happen is that when I get approached and people want their sites redesigned, I'll get like the Walton Foundation as an example, which is an absolutely beautiful website. And it's very up to date. It's got a lot of really relevant content. It probably costs, a couple $100,000 to develop. However, there are some really great themes and some really great starting points that you can use to, get a similar kind of look to that. But you just aren't going to have the same kind of customization involved with that. Trying to think of a good resource for like a good. Dawn, do you have anything that you would use as like a resource? I mean, a lot of times I just kind of look at what other people are doing and what I like, and I just kind of keep a bookmark list.
Yeah. We often do, I look at design websites and I often do a search of top 5 trends for 2020 and keep those ones in my back pocket for things. But it is definitely, it's part of our brainstorming process that the client has to come with websites that they like for whatever reason.
Yes.
They could just like Amazon, which is fine, and we can talk about why they like it. But it is part of their job is to come with sites that they enjoy using and they want to be like. So I think
Yes.
we get a lot of our design inspiration from what the clients already like, and then we think about how their content can fit into that frame.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it also is pretty revealing if you get some websites from, so sometimes they can differ greatly, the websites that, it's like, I really like the navigation from this site, but then I really like, how their blog posts look amazing on this site. And so I think that's really helpful to kind of get an idea of really what the client is expecting. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. And I have a design inspiration folder. So I have a Behance site, basically like profile, and I file away stuff. Anything that I can find online, I'll do screenshots and just stick them in that folder to make sure that if I am getting stumped or I'm needing a little bit of extra inspiration, go ahead and do that. And one of the things that I do like to do when I mentioned, testing the mobile responsiveness of the site is I love to go to sites and then I just click and drag on my browser on my computer to kind of see how the site is reconfiguring. Because sometimes it can happen in some really cool, surprising ways, how the mobile responsiveness is displaying itself. So that's just something else that I like to do to play around with things.
Great. Emily asks, are there ways to move your org's website above others in Google search? My first tip is to tune into Friday, our SEO tips, Friday morning with Kate. We have an SEO tips session. So that's really what it's about, is search engine optimization is how you move your organization above others. But Leandra, what do you have on your actual website? What are some really quick ways to help with SEO?
So I would say, yeah, I mean, definitely go to the seminar. There are people that who specialize in SEO. I am not one of them. I am definitely a visual person, so I am definitely a web designer developer. But I think as far as SEO goes, some best practices there would essentially be to make sure that you have some keywords that you are trying to, I would say try different ways of searching for your organization and see where your competitors are coming up. Like if you have people that are kind of doing the similar things to you, what search words are coming up for there? Go into your Google Analytics, try to see how are people finding you? I mean, you may be surprised. You may find that, like 30% of people are finding you through something, some longer search term that you wouldn't have even thought of. Don't definitely consider your location, especially if you are an organization that works locally. Don't discount having the locations and stuff like that you serve in multiple places on your website. Because if people are doing local searches for things, Google has definitely stepped up their results for things that are closer to you. I mean, you've done that anytime you search for a restaurant, you're going to get a restaurant that has a name similar to what you're looking for that's going to be close to you. You're not going to get something in Chicago. You're going to get something here. So I live in Durham, for example, but yeah, basically, those are just a couple quick ways of doing that. I'd say keywords, making sure your location is, obvious especially if you're working locally. And yeah, go to the webinar on Friday for sure.
That's right. I'm going to put it in the chat also. Okay.
Oh, nice.
So Cami asks, when you Google our website, only small info icons appear below our website name. Yours had large selections. Is there a way to change this? Not sure if this makes sense. Let's see. Sure. So it sounds like, Cami, it sounds like your metadata on the site might be on your homepage, might be garbled, and it's probably from a cut paste at some point. So I would look at your metadata on your homepage, and yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, without actually seeing it, it's hard to know.
Okay. Yeah, Cami, if you want to email Leandra your website, she might be able to take a peek. Would you take a peek,
Yeah,
Leandra?
absolutely. If I can look at it, I'm sure I can at least have a fighting chance of telling you what it is. It's hard. I'm very, like I said, I'm a very visual person, so.
Yeah. One last question, and other folks, you're welcome to email Leandra. I put a link to her presentation in the chat so that you can see her website, but also get a hold of her in all of her magical ways. So Megan asks, what are some of your favorite WordPress resources and tutorials?
So WordPress.org obviously is just a ginormous treasure trove of different resources and different how-tos. One of the things I also just really enjoy doing is it really depends on what you want to do. Because I have found some amazing tutorials just by basically Googling my problem. So for example, if I'm wondering if I have a certain issue that I need to solve, and I can't figure out why when I copy and paste text into here is all my spacing completely garbled and screwed up, and it may be, if you're copying it and pasting it from Word, if you're not using the copy as or paste as text feature that's built into WordPress, yeah, you're going to end up with these crazy div tags like all over your content that's going to make your spacing, and you're going to lose sleep over it. So I would say WordPress.org is a great place to start. That's obviously where they have all of the resources for reviews and downloads for all the plugins and stuff like that. And I really strongly recommend at least glancing at the reviews and downloads and stuff like that for these plugins before you start adding them, because it can get a little carried away. And some of these plugins, even though they do wonderful things, may have not been updated in 2 or 3 years. Unfortunately, I have this one plugin that I absolutely love, and it does this like one thing so well, but it hasn't been updated in forever. And I know the next version of WordPress is just going to totally break, but I'm holding out. Still using it on a couple sites because it's so great. But anyway, yeah, I would basically just Google my problem.
Yeah.
And then see if there's some good helpful, because there's so many out there. I usually, like I said, start with WordPress.org and then start Googling.
Yeah, and there's also great educational resources through, is it WordCamp? Is that the conference?
WordCamp, yeah, I would say you can definitely get some help there. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you so much for all your information today.
Absolutely.
And everybody have a great and productive afternoon. Bye.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dawn.
Bye.
Bye.